Hi friends, this is Make Saints. I'm Drew Downs. And today I want to talk about controversy. So we have this word in the English language, which is controversy, or how we often see it in headlines as controversial. And I want to highlight there are two things that this word means to us. One is to name a transgression that has happened in society that causes turmoil and a great deal of frustration. And it's owned at the point of action. So sort of a controversial, the example of controversial that comes to my mind was long before my time. You know, it was decades ago, was when the musician Jerry Lee Lewis married a teenager. And it was controversial at the time. His decision was transgressive because he was essentially marrying a child. And a lot of people didn't like it. That's often what we think of when we think of controversial. But I would contend in 2025 that is the minority use of the word controversial, because the modern use today tends to simply mean difference of opinion, and implying a sort of dualistic view in which there are two sides of equal character and just having heated or impassioned disagreement. That makes something controversial. And I want to highlight in these cases, what is happening is what is most controversial is the declaring of it as controversial. That most of the time, if it's just a difference of opinion, we call it that. If it's just partisanship, we call it that. What most often makes something controversial is the declaration that it is. So, this is a case of, for instance, like these days talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Saying the phrase or using the acronym DEI ends up being controversial. Now, why is it controversial? It's not because those letters themselves caused it or that anything happened in the creation of a DEI department. Now, chances are most of these were just repurposing of old things. We've been dealing with questions of diversity, equity, and inclusion for more than a century. These are all things, values that have been quite normal and routine to be considered as virtues. What has happened is that it has been weaponized. So the language around it and the naming of those three letters in that order, saying those letters becomes controversial. And so if you are claiming to support or participate in anything that is DEI, we're being told that you are the transgressor in the situation. Notice how that is being used, right? But really, this was just how it is. And this is normal. And then the next day, it's against the law. In Indiana, in Florida, right? This is normal. It is not controversial. What made it controversial was the declaration that it is. Similar thing happened to me 15 years ago when I took a call in Georgia, and the rector was asking me to take a phrase out of my bio because he did not want it to, he didn't want people upset that I used the phrase social justice because it had been coded as progressive or liberal. And even though as a phrase, it goes back to scripture, and as a sort of movement in the United States, it goes back to the 1880s as the norm, as the most popular and prevalent movement in the country for decades. This is not something that has much controversy to it innate. What became controversial was that some people decided it was and declared it controversial. Notice that this is that second definition. This is not the classic definition. This is the new definition, where there is division and we just want to name it as divisive, and therefore you must stop using it, but I can use it to demonize, right? You can't use it to define yourself because that makes you bad, but I can use it to demonize anyone who uses it, right? That being the mindset. Now that's a negative example. I want to give a positive example now. So if we think about language and the use of the N-word, like the N-word was common and normal and right used in the country. It clearly caused a lot of pain and suffering to people for every time it is used, and has always been that way. There's a way in which we could say it was always controversial. But it was when a small group chose to make it controversial to use it that we stopped using it. It became the N-word, and we stopped saying the actual word, right? There's a reason we did that. And the reason we did that was because we were encouraged to. But there's a deeper fundamental piece to this. Those, the examples that would silence us from using traditional words like social justice or inclusive language, these are not good. The vision of what we're trying to do about making a world that is more diverse, equitable, and inclusive is good, to try and keep people and participate and find and sort of executing justice, not people. That is like our work. Similarly, getting people to stop being jerks and calling people bad names, like that's good work. What is bad work is preventing that stuff. So there's a way in which we're using controversial to hide what is really going on and preventing us from seeing this bigger picture, that we are trying to make things better for people's lives. And some people don't want that to be true and want to discourage that from happening and prevent us from saying those words. So I wanted to talk about this with you today because I just wanted us to be clear about this language and be clear about these intentions and what is actually happening. That we should not be silenced from using really good words like diversity, equity, inclusion, social justice. These are really valuable concepts that are super, super traditional and normal. They, in fact, are the things we all claim to value. And what ends up happening is you have people feeling the need to make them controversial and oppose them for partisan reasons. And that we must reject, right? So I want to encourage you. I want to help encourage you to both use the words that are needed, the words that are valuable and have real tradition behind them. I want you to feel like that's recognize what's happening and know which words you should be using and which ones you shouldn't, right? We should be using diversity. We should not be using the N word, right? That's how that works, right? Or the R word, right? We need to not use that language. The same way, I'm hoping that we'll see what happens in our brains whenever we see the word controversial and what that does to the conversation and what it's trying to do, whether we notice it or not. So whenever we see that word in a headline, we do this little interrogation. Where is the transgression? Where is the good here? Because we have so much good we're trying to do, and I want to help every one of us to see that and live that and be that in all things. Perhaps we call that controversial. Probably is not nearly as controversial as some would want it to be. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.